You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, the weekly podcast for small town people with big dreams and ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undem, and each week we'll cover a topic meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you to live big in your small town. Although it has its challenges, nothing beats small town living, and we're committed to sharing the best of what's working in the communities we serve. So enjoy this episode, and we hope it helps you to bloom where you've been planted. Welcome to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk Show. I am your host, Rebecca Undem, and today I'm doing a fun little best of episode. We're at the end of 2019, and it's kind of exciting to have actually recorded enough episodes. We are actually coming up on a full year of weekly shows, which is super exciting. So it's fun to have a lot of really great guests and a lot of really great episodes to look back at and say, okay, if I had to pick kind of the top 10 ideas, and actually it's a little bit themes that came out in all of the shows that we did this year, these are them. So without further ado, here are the best of 2019 from the Small Town Big Talk Show. Number 1, the idea of you cannot out-hustle your feelings. This came up a lot, even in some of our earliest episodes, episode 7 with Catherine Vignes, episode 8 with Marilyn McMurray, episode 9 with Nicole Klein. So clearly there, we were on a bit of a feelings kick for 3 weeks in a row. Episode 41 with Crystal Checketts, and then most recently, episode 46 with Tiffany Home. So I guess you could say that I really believe that feelings matter. And I think largely this comes down to, and in talking with all of these guests specifically, and lots of people in small towns over the past year, I think that some of this comes back to the culture that I grew up in and I still live in. I live in the Midwest in North Dakota, where we are a very stoic group of people. So oftentimes, I think it has been minimized as there's no real value in showing your feelings, acknowledging your feelings, definitely talking about your feelings just doesn't hold a lot of value. And I think that that's something I am diligently working to try and kind of change the perspective on that, because here's what I think honoring our feelings or acknowledging our feelings, even the challenging ones, what it allows us to do. First of all, I think our feelings are usually a signal of something going on. A lot of times that unease or that dis-ease, which is disease, if you didn't catch that, it can come from your body telling you. And I don't want to get too woo-woo here. If you really want the woo, go back to episodes 8 and 9 with my friends Marilyn and Nicole. Marilyn is just a good friend of mine. She uses this communication tool called Trailblazing Communications. And anything, by the way, that I mention, I will link out in the show notes. So you can check these things and resources out on your own. Nicole Klein is my local chiropractor. She's a naturopath and she's a holistic chiropractor. Both of these women, we talked about how not acknowledging our feelings will actually create that dis-ease in our bodies to where we can get sick. A lot of stress weakens your immune system, and that's factual. That's not woo at all. So I think, first of all, there's just that. It's good for your body to acknowledge your feelings. Secondly, it's the fact that difficult and challenging times, it gives us an opportunity to connect with other people. Real connection comes from honesty and truth. And so if we're only showing people all the good things that are happening, there's a whole side of who we are that we're not expressing to them. And that means our connection is not as genuine, not as real. So I think, again, check out those episodes if this is of interest to you. And then at Tiff Home specifically, she and I talked about mental health. And I think it's just, again, it's kind of removing that stigma of it's okay to not be okay. We say that, and you see it on quote cards all over social media. But I mean, when we're talking about what this really looks like in real life, it is being able to say, I'm scared, or I'm uncertain, or I feel like I'm failing at this or that or the other thing, and being able to say that without all of the freaking shame attached to it. So you cannot out-hustle your feelings. That is takeaway big theme number 1 from 2019. Number 2, my rock star virtual assistant, Cassidy Johnston, she joined me in episode 17. So by the way, these are in chronological order, as in we will share the oldest kind of takeaways first coming up to present day. So it was episode 17 where Cassidy joined me, and we talked about the tendency for small towns to have a small-mindedness as well. And one of the things that she said, here's your quotable, is that we fear what we don't know. And so what we tend to do in small towns is we make wholesale assumptions about entire groups of people that we've likely never even met. So I say, it's all about checking our those potential biases and trying not to judge people or ideas based on stuff we've read on the internet. And honestly, enjoy the internet, but do it with caution. This is one of those relationships. She and I talk about it all the time. I've never physically laid eyes on Cassidy. We've been working together for, almost 2 years now. And she is so important to me. And her little family is so beautiful. I love them so much. Cassidy, I love you so much. This is a little love note to you, friend. But we've never even laid eyes on each other. We've never hugged in person, which feels unfathomable to me because we feel like we know each other. But so the internet is still an amazing place for those real connections to happen. But I do think that we need to proceed with caution and not just believe everything that we read, right? So we fear what we don't know. This really leads perfectly into number 3, just don't make assumptions. This came up topically in episode 18 with Marlene Ike, and we were talking about this in the context of networking in small towns, because I think a lot of times we go, well, we don't need to network in a small town. Like, what the heck? We know everybody. But we first of all think that's an assumption in and of itself. And throughout that episode, she shares some really valuable ideas on and really why, like how to do it, why we should do it. But I think this don't make assumptions. It has been coming up for me as of late in a broader context. And in fact, just yesterday's newsletter that went out from me, I talked about that there's this big danger of making assumptions, and it's affecting us in a lot of other ways. So the idea of making assumptions really means that we think we know, right? We think we know what someone's going to say. We think we know what someone's going to do. And instead, the goal is to ask questions. So our curiosity and our assumption doing or giving or making, those are negatively correlated, right? So the more curious we are, the less we make assumptions. The less curious we are, the more we make assumptions. And being curious is a really important thing to embrace. When we make assumptions and we don't ask enough questions, we limit our ability to learn. And our ability to learn is obviously completely correlated to our ability to grow. And so this, for me, is where the internet has become, honestly, a little dangerous and kind of a scary place. Out in the world right now, we've got people, they're kind of like social justice warriors, I guess, is what we could call them. And they are out actively advocating for things like the celebration of differences and the equality for all. And these things that sound, at first blush, they sound like ideals that any of us would want to support. Like, I want the best for people, right? But what they really mean is that they will celebrate only the differences that they agree with. And that's dangerous. That's when it becomes dangerous. It's not celebrating differences if you have to agree with my viewpoints that differ from yours. You don't have to agree with me to still honor me and respect me as a human being, right? So that kind of assumption making, it makes us weaker minded and obviously far more polarized, as evidenced by what's going on in our country, right? So number 3 is don't make assumptions. Don't assume you know, ask instead. Number 4, belonging is tethered to purpose. This statement was made by my dear friend, Britt Colo, in episode 22. Britt is the founder of a really cool digital company called Marketing Personalities, where she matches people's marketing strategies to their personality type and like their best marketing strategy. So her whole hashtag is marketing that feels good. Like in her mind, and it's not just her mind. I so agree with what she's preaching to the world and what she's delivering and the value she's offering, especially small business owners. Her whole thing is, if it doesn't feel good to you, it won't feel good to your audience. So quit doing things that don't feel good to you if you have a business. And I think this is important beyond that, but we're going to keep it to the context of business. So all of us, again, here, the internet does this to us. We spend a lot of time looking around and saying, gosh, what are they doing? And let's say they have a business that you aspire to have a business like theirs, or it's similar in nature in some way. You look at them and you're like, how do I figure out how to do exactly what they're doing the way that they're doing it? Okay, well, not only is this futile, because they are not you and you are not them, okay? And sometimes these things sound very cliche, and I understand that, but I think about these things regularly, right? So when we're watching somebody that isn't wired the same way we are, it doesn't matter how good they look doing their thing, we're never going to be able to replicate that, okay? So not only is it futile, but it's also extremely isolating and kind of shaming, because the second that we start to practice things or try to do things that aren't in alignment with who we really are. And marketing is such a great example of this. So anybody that has a business, any of you listening, if you have a business and you've tried to market yourself or your services or your stuff in a way that you walk away going, God, this just feels icky, like it just doesn't feel good to me, there's a reason for that. It's probably not right for you. So it can feel really shaming because then you also feel like, but everyone else is having success doing it that way. So what's the matter with me? Okay. My friend Britt would say, who are you really? And she obviously has some tools to help you work through this, which again, find the links in the show notes. You can get your own personality. She has a whole report. It's freaking fantastic. And you should check it out, especially if you're a business owner. But getting back to the core of who we really are, this is the thing. I think there's a lot of articles out there that's like, how do I find my purpose? You know what, friend? Your purpose is already there. It's already there and it's always been there. So when you figure out and you start to really ask yourself those tough questions, like what would I do if none of this mattered and I could do anything, which I know sometimes can feel like, well, so what? Like I would sail around the world, like money is a thing and paying bills is a thing. But these questions can still unlock answers about yourself, especially if you've never asked anything like that. Like, what would I do if I could do anything? If I wasn't constrained by anything, time, money, people, location, friends, small towns. I'm wearing my Support Your Small Town t-shirt today, which I know you guys can't see, but I think a lot of times we go, oh, well, I can't because I live in a small town. Okay. Ditch all of that. Do some journaling, however you work out your processes, and ask yourself some of those questions. The cool thing is when you figure out the answers to some of those things, you will figure out what your contribution to the world can look like. And it's your own thing. And the coolest thing is it's also going to be something that no one else actually can do. We were all uniquely equipped. And that is a beautiful thing to spend time discovering. And in my mind, it's like, why wouldn't we spend the time? Because the truth is you're not going to find your own sense of belonging in this world by trying to be like somebody else. Belonging is tethered to purpose. Number 5. This was a good reframe for me, and I've said it lots of times now. Episode 23 with Megan Laudenschlager. She said, I urge people to quit saying that I live in the middle of nowhere and instead say I live in the middle of everywhere. We are my little town is over 70 miles from the closest Target. And it has always made me feel like when people say, where do you live? I'll be like, oh, southeast corner of the state. And if people don't know North Dakota, which you're probably surprised to hear this, lots of people don't know North Dakota. And then I say, yeah, we're, 110 miles, southwest of Fargo and about 70 miles north of Aberdeen, South Dakota. So those are bigger communities. And then I have always followed up with, kind of in the middle of nowhere. I have actually eliminated this from my vocabulary. I do not say it anymore. And I now say to people, like in the middle of everywhere. And if nothing else, come on, like some of these things should just be light and fun. If nothing else, the small town people that you say that to, or anybody you say it to, they will smile like, oh, clever. And now you know where it came from. It's a good one. I encourage you to say it. And it isn't just about what you say. It's about how what you say, our words have impact on how we think. So if you start thinking to yourself, like, I live in the middle of everywhere, look at all the stuff that I get to access, even if you have to drive for it, right? Changes the way that you'll think about where you live. Number 6, may your yeses be joyful. This was from episode 24 with my friend Beth Priday. Beth is a cancer survivor and the owner of an ice cream truck. That's right. She owns a freaking ice cream truck. And I'm like, I can't. It's like joy on wheels is what we talked about in the episode. She just said that, obviously cancer is cancer, losing a loved one. Sometimes we have pivotal things that just fundamentally change the way we think about the world. Getting and surviving cancer, I would imagine, not being able to speak from personal experience, but I would guess that it's one of those things. And she said, I believe wholeheartedly in supporting your small town in as many ways as you possibly can. But she said, for me, I insist on ensuring that the ways I do contribute come from a place of joy. And I just think that I couldn't agree with it more. It's been kind of a fundamental topic in a lot of the women's programming that I've done over the past few years, is just helping women embrace no so that their yeses can be joyful. Those best yeses are such a good thing to pursue. So I think maybe we should make a t-shirt. It's just a thought. So may your yeses be joyful and your coffee be full. Beth would agree with that too. Number 7, we get to decide who we are. Colby Williams said this in episode 35, and we were talking all about entrepreneurship. And he has a really cool story in that episode about how his small town became a cool place because they said it. And so this whole, you get to decide who you are. This is communities, families, churches, people. If you declare who it is that you are or who you want to be and say it out loud, people can rally around that thing. So if you really should go and listen to it. He talks a lot about how they've rebranded the community, and there was kind of this historical nod that they kept making. And he said, so it absolutely changed our ability, or made it almost impossible for our community to talk about being innovative and forward thinking, because we just kept holding on to who we used to be. So it was him and just a few kind of rogue friends. They got together and they decided to reframe this part of their small community. So their community is not as small as my small town. They kind of have neighborhoods, in fact. But the one neighborhood that they wanted to change, they decided to brand it and talk about it as if it were hip and cool. And lo and behold, it suddenly became hip and cool. And I thought that was really important, because we have the ability to decide who we are. So who do you want to be? What do you want your town to be? And maybe start talking about it as if it were. Number 8, love the one you're with. So this was from episode 42, which featured me. Okay. So I'm just saying love the one you're with as a simple reminder. In that episode, I share 4 strategies. I call them love strategies for really digging deep and investing in the people, resources, businesses, and stuff that already exists in your community. Since we aired that episode, I had the privilege to share this with another small town of about 3,500. We had such a beautiful conversation about what this looks like and what this means and why it's so important. So as you continue in 2020 to think about how to expand and grow your community, I urge you to first take a hard look around and realize how much you already do have, and then love it, and love it hard. Number 9, be open to whatever comes next. My friend Wendy, I think my friend, I've said it of every guest, they are my friends. At some point, they become friends to me. So Wendy Royston said this in episode 43. She's a freelance writer, in fact, in her small town. And her career partly came about because she really never said never. She just remained open to the possibilities that could come her way. And, not only do I believe this mindset could and will actually create more of that kind of magic, simply due to the fact that inspiration looks around for a hospitable home. And I urge you to check out the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert for more on that, because she talks about that a lot, that if we're not open, the best ideas aren't going to land with us. They're going to find a more hospitable place to dwell, which I think is a powerful thought. But besides that, I also believe that oftentimes there's something cooler on the horizon than what you could have come up with or perfectly planned for yourself. My life is 100% evidence of that. I had a plan, guys. I was going to, I always joke. I was going to get a job, and I was going to, I was going to graduate from college because I need that 4-year degree. And, it's almost like check that box. And then of course I'm going to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled forever. Well, my life, none of those things, I did a few of the boxes. I checked them. The things that have come my way are not anything I could have planned for. And that's partly because we get brought to the forks in the road by circumstances. And a lot of times those circumstances are not things that we plan for. And that's kind of going back to cancer or death of loved ones or random opportunities that land in your lap. And you go, well, where did that come from? Right? So I think being open to whatever comes next really allows us to take part in the magic of what's out there, what exists. And it's not just for people. It certainly applies to organizations and communities too. And I'd say that our guest, Becky McRae, in episode 34, she gives this overall idea a nod as well. And she shared that we get so much more traction as a small town or an organizer of something when we let go of the need to control the entire process and we let other people get involved. Oftentimes people want to see certain cool things happen, but we have so perfectly articulated every single step that people feel like they're being voluntold, right? You have the whole plan and then you say, we need 15 volunteers. And people go, I don't want to do any of that, but I like what you're trying to do. How do we engage those people? Don't ever forget that people support a world they help create. So be open to whatever comes next. Allow people to engage, allow people to be a part of it as well. And finally, number 10, quit looking for somebody. Joe Bartman, the president of Dakota Resources, just recently said this just last week on episode 47 of the Small Town Big Talk show, as we talked about how to shift mindsets in small communities. He believes, and I believe, and it's part of one of the founding beliefs that I have about small towns, is that we can give ourselves permission. We don't need to wait around for someone to give us permission to try things out. And I know that again, sounds easier said than done, but my goal in 2020 is to feature and highlight as many people proving that as possible so that you can constantly see that it is possible. It's not just possible for other people, it's possible for you. And so you are the somebody that your small town needs. And so as we leave you today, I want to ask, what are you going to create in 2020 for yourself, for your family, for your church, for your, the committees you're involved with, for your town? What are you going to create? Because you are the somebody that they're looking for. As we close out 2019, I want to thank you from honestly, the bottom of my big old gushy heart. And there's a good chance my voice will break as I tear up because I'm such a sap. I cannot even help it. I embrace my feelings now. I do, and it's okay. But I want to thank you for choosing the Small Town Big Talk show, not only to fill your ears, but to fill your hearts with the ideas and topics that help to make small towns better. I want to sincerely thank all of the guests that I mentioned today and every single person that came on the show in the last year. And ultimately, I want to thank them, all of you guys, for your dedication and your commitment to making small towns thrive. I really do. I feel so blessed to live in my small town and to get to share this work with you and everybody else. I'm humbled, I'm honored, and I'm so excited for what's to come in 2020. Merry Christmas to you all, to all of you listening from my home, my family, and my hometown of Oaks, North Dakota, to yours. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk show. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe on Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the easier it will be for other small town friends to find us. We encourage you to keep on living big in your small town because the size of your life is not determined by your zip code.